There comes a moment in life when you realize that everything you have been chasing was never what you truly needed. You have spent years running after success, relationships, validation, believing that once you have them, you will finally be happy. But every time you reach a goal, the satisfaction fades and you find yourself searching for the next thing, convinced that the missing piece is just a little further ahead. But what if the search itself is the problem? What if the very act of chasing happiness is what keeps it out of reach? Most people do not question why they feel restless, why they are never fully at peace, why there is always a sense that something is missing. They assume that if they just work harder, if they just achieve more, if they just find the right person, everything will finally make sense. But Buddhism teaches that true peace is not found in the future. It is not waiting for you in some distant moment. It exists only in the now, and the only reason you cannot feel it is because your mind is always elsewhere. Imagine a traveler walking through a beautiful garden, but instead of admiring the flowers, they are staring at a map, trying to figure out how to get to another garden they have heard about. They step over petals without noticing them, pass by fountains without hearing the water, never realizing that the beauty they are searching for is already around them. This is how most people live, so focused on what is ahead that they miss what is here. They believe happiness is a destination, when in reality, it is a way of seeing. But how do you train your mind to stop searching and start seeing? The first step is awareness. Begin to notice how often you believe that something outside of you will complete you. Pay attention to how often you tell yourself, "I will be happy when," and then ask yourself, has this ever worked? Has reaching a goal ever given you permanent peace? Or did it just make you crave something else? The mind is always looking for the next thing because it is never satisfied with the present. It tells you that something is missing, that you are not enough as you are, that you must keep striving, keep proving, keep chasing. But this is an illusion. You are already whole. You do not need to add anything to yourself to be complete. You only need to remove the belief that you are not. Think of the sky. Sometimes it is filled with clouds. Sometimes it is clear, but no matter what happens, the sky itself does not change. Your true nature is like this. Thoughts, emotions, desires. They come and go like passing clouds. But beneath them, your essence remains the same. And the more you identify with the sky, rather than the clouds, the more you understand that nothing outside of you can take away your peace, because your peace is not dependent on circumstances. But most people do not realize this, because they are too attached to their thoughts. They believe everything their mind tells them. They think, "I am not good enough," and they accept it as truth. They think, "I need this to be happy," and they believe it without question. But Buddhism teaches that the mind is not always telling the truth. It is simply repeating patterns, conditioned by years of external influence. And the moment you start questioning it, the moment you stop believing every thought that arises, you create space for something deeper. Meditation is one of the most powerful tools for this practice. It teaches you to observe your mind without attachment, to watch your thoughts without becoming lost in them. Through meditation, you begin to see that your worries, your fears, your desires, they are all temporary. They are like waves in the ocean, rising and falling, but never changing the ocean itself. And when you learn to sit in this awareness, when you stop chasing and start observing, you find a peace that does not depend on anything outside of you. But meditation is not just about sitting in silence. It is about bringing mindfulness into every moment. It is about truly tasting your food instead of eating while distracted. It is about listening to someone without thinking about what you will say next. It is about feeling the air on your skin, the ground beneath your feet, the simple miracle of being alive. When you begin to live like this, you realize that happiness is not something to be found. It is something to be noticed. It is something that has been here all along. Yet, even when people understand this, they still struggle to let go of attachment. They say, "I know I should be happy with what I have, but I still want more." They fear that if they stop striving, they will become stagnant, that if they stop chasing, they will be left with nothing. But letting go does not mean giving up. It does not mean you stop working towards goals or stop improving yourself. It means you stop tying your happiness to the outcome. It means you do things for the joy of the process, not because you believe they will complete you. Imagine an artist painting, not to sell the painting, not to impress anyone, but simply because they love the act of creating. They are immersed in the colors, the brush strokes, the moment. This is how life is meant to be lived, not as a means to an end, but as something beautiful in itself. Ask yourself, how would your life change if you stopped trying to get somewhere and started being exactly where you are? What if you trusted that you do not need to rush, that everything you need is already here, that nothing is missing except your own awareness of it? Most suffering comes from resistance, from wanting life to be different than it is. But what if, instead of resisting, you accepted? What if, instead of fighting, you flowed? Life is like a river. You can spend your energy trying to swim against the current, or you can let go and trust that it is carrying you exactly where you need to be. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that you do not need to prove anything to anyone, that you do not need to seek approval, that you do not need to achieve something grand to be worthy. Imagine the peace of knowing that you are enough, exactly as you are. This is not an impossible dream. This is something you can cultivate step by step by shifting your perspective, by training your mind to see what has always been here. Take a deep breath. Feel the stillness around you. Know that in this moment, you are whole. You always have been. And the more you stop searching, the more you will realize that what you were looking for was never outside of you. It was always within, waiting to be seen. There comes a moment when you must ask yourself, what if everything you have been searching for has been within you all along? What if the happiness you seek, the peace you long for, the sense of wholeness you crave, has never been something outside of you, but something waiting to be uncovered? Most people spend their lives looking outward, chasing after relationships, accomplishments, recognition, believing that these things will complete them. But Buddhism teaches that true fulfillment is not something you find. It is something you awaken to. And solitude is the gateway to that awakening. The fear of solitude is not truly about being alone. It is about what arises when we are alone. The mind, left without distractions, becomes louder. Thoughts you have been avoiding begin to surface. Insecurities, regrets, doubts. Everything you have buried beneath the noise of daily life starts to come forward. And this is where most people turn back. They reach for distractions, for social validation, for anything that will quiet the discomfort. But what if, instead of running from these thoughts, you faced them? What if, instead of avoiding solitude, you stepped into it fully, with curiosity, with openness, with the understanding that on the other side of discomfort is transformation? Imagine standing before a mirror that reflects not just your outer self, but your inner world. At first, it may be unsettling. You may see things you do not want to see: old wounds, unresolved fears, unfulfilled desires. But the more you look, the more you begin to understand, the more you begin to accept. And in that acceptance, healing begins. Most people avoid solitude because they have been conditioned to believe that their worth is tied to external things, that they must always be busy, always be achieving, always be surrounded by people in order to be valuable. But Buddhism teaches that your worth is not something that needs to be proven. It is not dependent on productivity, on validation, on how many people want your attention. It is something inherent, something that exists simply because you exist. And the moment you stop looking outward for confirmation of your worth, you begin to feel it from within. But how do you reach this place of self-acceptance? How do you become comfortable in your own presence when you have spent so much time avoiding it? The first step is to change your relationship with solitude. To stop seeing it as emptiness and start seeing it as space. Space for self-discovery. Space for growth. Space to reconnect with the parts of yourself that have been neglected. One of the most powerful ways to do this is through self-inquiry. Ask yourself the questions you have been afraid to ask. Who am I beyond my roles, beyond my achievements, beyond my relationships? What do I truly desire? Not what society tells me to desire, but what my heart longs for. What fears are holding me back? What beliefs have I accepted without questioning? Write down your answers. Do not filter them. Do not judge them. Simply allow yourself to explore. The more you do this, the more you will begin to uncover the layers of conditioning that have shaped you. The more you will begin to see yourself clearly, beyond the masks, beyond the expectations. Meditation is another path to deepening your relationship with yourself. It is the practice of sitting in stillness, observing your thoughts without attachment, learning to separate who you are from the endless stream of mental chatter. Through meditation, you begin to see that you are not your fears. You are not your doubts. You are not the stories your mind tells you. You are the awareness beneath it all. And when you realize this, solitude no longer feels threatening. It becomes a sanctuary, a place where you can rest, where you can recharge, where you can simply be. But solitude is not just about reflection. It is also about creation. When you stop seeking validation from the outside world, you gain the freedom to build a life that excites you. What would you do if there were no expectations, no limitations, no need to impress anyone? What passions would you pursue? What dreams would you allow yourself to chase? When you stop living for others and start living for yourself, you unlock a level of fulfillment that cannot be taken away. Think about the great artists, the great thinkers, the great visionaries of history. Many of them found their greatest inspiration in solitude. It was in the quiet moments, away from the world, that they connected with something deeper, something beyond the surface of daily life. Solitude, when embraced fully, does not isolate you from the world. It connects you to it in a way that is more profound, more meaningful, more real. But in order to reach this place, you must first let go of the belief that you need someone else to make you whole, that you need constant interaction to feel worthy, that your happiness depends on things outside of yourself. Buddhism teaches that everything is impermanent. People, circumstances, even emotions. If your peace is tied to external things, it will always be fragile. But when your peace comes from within, it becomes unshakable. Imagine standing in the middle of a storm. The wind is fierce, the rain is relentless, but at the center of it all, you remain still. This is the power of inner peace. The world may change, people may come and go, but you remain grounded. You remain whole. Ask yourself, what would happen if you stopped searching for happiness outside of yourself? What would happen if, instead of fearing solitude, you embraced it? What if the thing you have been running from is the very thing that will set you free? Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that you no longer feel the need to prove yourself to anyone, that you no longer seek approval, that you no longer depend on the presence of others to feel whole. Imagine the strength of knowing that no matter what happens, you are enough, that your happiness is not fragile, not temporary, not dependent on anything outside of you. This is not an impossible dream. This is something you can cultivate step by step, by shifting your perspective, by learning to love your own presence, by seeing solitude not as loneliness, but as an opportunity. Take a deep breath. Let go of the fear. Let go of the need for constant validation. Allow yourself to be still, to listen, to discover who you are beneath the noise. And in that discovery, you will find something unexpected. Peace. Because peace was never something you had to search for. It was always within you, waiting for you to come home to yourself. There comes a time when you must stop searching outside yourself for the answers that have always been within. For so long, you have been conditioned to believe that happiness is something to be found, that peace is something to be achieved, that fulfillment is something granted by external circumstances. But what if none of that was true? What if the very act of searching was the reason you have not found it? What if the answers were never in the world around you, but in the stillness within you? Most people live in a constant state of longing for more, longing for something different, longing for something they believe will finally make them feel whole. But Buddhism teaches that this longing itself is the root of suffering, the belief that you are incomplete, that something is missing, that you must reach a certain destination before you can truly be at peace. This is the illusion that keeps you trapped. And the moment you step out of that illusion, the moment you stop looking for happiness elsewhere and realize that it has always been available in the present moment, everything changes. Imagine a man wandering through the desert, desperate for water. He searches for miles, convinced that if he just keeps walking, he will find what he needs. But what he does not realize is that beneath his feet, buried deep in the ground, lies an underground spring, waiting to be discovered. He has been looking in the wrong place all along. This is how most people live. They seek happiness in achievements, in relationships, in material things, never realizing that true peace does not come from acquiring. It comes from uncovering. But how do you uncover something that has been buried beneath years of conditioning, years of false beliefs, years of external influence? The first step is awareness. Begin to notice how often your mind pulls you away from the present moment. Pay attention to how often you tell yourself, "I will be happy when," and realize that every time you have reached a goal in the past, the mind has simply replaced it with a new one. There is always something else to chase, something else to fix, something else to accomplish. But what if you stopped running? What if you accepted the radical truth that nothing is missing? The mind does not want you to believe this because it thrives on seeking. It convinces you that you must always be improving, always be achieving, always be moving forward. But in reality, the present moment is all you have ever had. And when you finally learn to be fully in it, without resistance, without longing, you experience a peace that no external thing can ever provide. Most people do not know how to be present because they have never been taught. From a young age, you were conditioned to plan, to analyze, to think about the future, to dwell on the past. But the more time you spend lost in thought, the less time you spend truly living. And the tragedy is that most people do not realize this until it is too late, until they look back and see that they spent their entire lives preparing for a moment that never came. Think of a river. It does not hesitate. It does not resist. It does not try to flow backward. It moves effortlessly, adapting to every twist and turn, knowing that wherever it is, that is exactly where it is meant to be. But humans resist. We cling to the past. We fear the future. We hold on to things that are meant to pass. And in doing so, we create our own suffering. But what would happen if you stopped resisting? What would happen if you trusted that everything in life is unfolding exactly as it should? What if, instead of trying to control everything, you simply allowed yourself to flow with it? This does not mean giving up. It does not mean becoming passive. It means recognizing that control is an illusion. It means understanding that no matter how much you plan, no matter how much you try to force things to go your way, life will always unfold in ways you cannot predict. And the more you accept this, the more peace you will find. Meditation is one of the most powerful ways to practice this. It teaches you to observe your thoughts without attachment, to see them as passing clouds rather than absolute truths. Through meditation, you realize that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them. And when you begin to detach from the constant noise of the mind, when you learn to sit in stillness without needing to fill it with distractions, you discover something unexpected: peace. But stillness is not just about meditation. It is about the way you move through life. It is about truly tasting your food instead of eating mindlessly. It is about listening to someone without thinking about what you will say next. It is about watching a sunset without needing to capture it, without needing to share it, without needing to do anything other than experience it fully. Ask yourself, how often do you truly experience life as it is happening? How often are you fully engaged, fully present, fully alive? Or are you always somewhere else? Always waiting for the next thing, always believing that happiness is just one step ahead. The truth is, happiness is not ahead of you. It is not waiting in the future. It is in the breath you are taking right now. It is in the sound of the wind, the feeling of the ground beneath your feet, the simple act of being alive. And the more you train yourself to see this, the less you will need to search. Yet even with this awareness, the mind still struggles to let go. It clings to attachments, to identities, to fears, to desires. It tells you that you need more, that you are not enough as you are. But what if you question that thought? What if you saw it for what it really is? Just another passing cloud. Think of a person standing in the middle of a storm, trying to stop the wind, trying to push away the rain. They exhaust themselves. They fight against nature, but they cannot change it. But the moment they stop fighting, the moment they accept the storm for what it is, something shifts. They realize that the storm was never the problem. Their resistance to it was. Life is the same way. You will face challenges. You will experience pain. But suffering is not caused by what happens to you. It is caused by your resistance to it. And the more you learn to let go, the lighter you become. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that you no longer need to prove anything to anyone, that you no longer need to chase happiness, that you no longer need to hold on to things that are meant to pass. Imagine the freedom of simply being without needing to be anywhere else, without needing to be anyone else. This is not an impossible dream. This is something you can cultivate step by step, by shifting your perspective, by questioning your thoughts, by learning to see the present moment for the gift that it is. Take a deep breath. Feel the stillness around you. Know that in this moment, you are whole. You always have been. And the more you stop searching, the more you will realize that what you were looking for was never outside of you. It was always within, waiting to be seen. There comes a moment when you realize that the things you have been holding on to are the very things that have been holding you back. You have spent so much time grasping at the past, worrying about the future, trying to control every outcome, believing that if you could just keep everything in place, you would finally find peace. But Buddhism teaches that peace is not found in control. It is found in surrender. It is found in the ability to let go, to trust, to understand that life will unfold as it is meant to, whether you resist it or not. Most suffering does not come from what happens to us, but from our resistance to what happens. It comes from the stories we tell ourselves, the expectations we refuse to release, the belief that life must conform to our desires in order for us to be happy. But what if happiness was not about getting what you want, but about learning to love what is? What if the key to peace was not in rearranging the world around you, but in shifting the way you see it? Imagine a person clinging to a rock in the middle of a river, struggling against the current, trying to hold on, afraid of where the water might take them. They believe that if they just grip tightly enough, they can stop the flow. They can stay in place. They can resist the inevitable. But the river does not stop. The current keeps pulling, and the longer they resist, the more exhausted they become. But what happens when they finally let go? When they surrender to the flow? When they stop fighting? When they trust that the river will carry them where they need to go? They discover that the struggle was never necessary. The pain was never in the river. It was in their resistance. This is how life works. Change is inevitable. The more you try to fight it, the more you suffer. But the moment you accept, the moment you trust, the moment you allow life to move as it is meant to, you find a freedom that cannot be taken away. But how do you learn to let go when your mind has been conditioned to hold on? How do you release the fears, the attachments, the need for control? The first step is to become aware of how often you resist. Pay attention to the moments when you feel frustrated, anxious, overwhelmed, and ask yourself, what am I clinging to? What expectation am I holding on to that is causing me pain? And then ask yourself, what would happen if I let it go? Most people believe that letting go means losing something. But the truth is, letting go often means gaining something greater: peace. When you release the need to control, you gain freedom. When you stop clinging to the past, you gain presence. When you stop fearing change, you gain the ability to truly live. Think of a tree in autumn. It does not try to hold on to its leaves. It does not mourn when they begin to fall. It understands that this is the natural cycle of life, that new leaves will grow in time, that there is beauty in every stage. But humans resist this truth. We hold on to things long after they are meant to leave. We grasp at moments, trying to make them last forever. We cling to relationships that have already ended, to identities that no longer fit, to versions of ourselves that we have outgrown. And in doing so, we create our own suffering. But what would happen if you trusted that every ending is also a beginning? What if you believed that what is meant for you will never require you to cling to it? What if, instead of fearing change, you welcomed it? Buddhism teaches that the root of suffering is attachment, the belief that we must possess things, that we must hold on to them in order to be happy. But true happiness is found in non-attachment, not in not caring, but in loving without possession, in experiencing without needing to control, in appreciating without fearing loss. Most people misunderstand this concept. They believe that non-attachment means not feeling, not caring, not loving. But in reality, it is the opposite. When you are no longer attached, you are able to love more fully because your love is not based on fear. You do not need to control someone in order to keep them. You do not need to possess something in order to appreciate it. You do not need certainty in order to feel at peace. Imagine holding a handful of sand. The tighter you grip, the more it slips through your fingers. But when you open your hand, when you let it rest gently in your palm, it remains. This is how life is meant to be lived, not with fear, not with desperation, but with trust. The moment you stop trying to force things, the moment you allow them to be as they are, you find a peace that is deeper than any temporary satisfaction could ever provide. But letting go is not just about the past. It is also about the future. Most suffering comes not from what has happened, but from our fears about what is yet to come. We worry, we plan, we try to control, believing that if we just prepare enough, we can avoid pain. But life is unpredictable. No amount of planning can change that. And the more we try to control the future, the more we miss the present. Ask yourself, how much time do you spend worrying about things that have not happened? How much energy do you waste trying to prepare for every possible outcome? And what would happen if, instead of trying to control the future, you trusted it? Imagine standing at the edge of a vast ocean, watching the waves rise and fall. You do not try to stop them. You do not try to hold on to them. You simply watch, knowing that the ocean moves as it is meant to. This is how life works. No moment is meant to last forever. No feeling is permanent. The more you accept this, the more peace you will find. But most people resist this truth. They fear that if they stop trying to control everything, they will lose something important. But what they do not realize is that the more they try to hold on, the more they suffer. The more they try to control, the more life slips through their fingers. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that you no longer need to prove anything to anyone, that you no longer need to chase happiness, that you no longer need to hold on to things that are meant to pass. Imagine the freedom of simply being, without needing to be anywhere else, without needing to be anyone else. This is not an impossible dream. This is something you can cultivate, step by step, by shifting your perspective, by questioning your thoughts, by learning to see the present moment for the gift that it is. Take a deep breath. Feel the stillness around you. Know that in this moment, you are whole. You always have been. And the more you stop searching, the more you will realize that what you were looking for was never outside of you. It was always within, waiting to be seen. There comes a moment when you must question everything you have been taught about happiness. For years, you have been led to believe that happiness is something you achieve, something you earn, something that comes after a series of accomplishments. But what if that was never true? What if the search itself was the very thing keeping happiness out of reach? What if peace was not something you had to chase, but something that was already within you, waiting for you to stop running long enough to see it? Most people live in a state of constant distraction, filling every moment with noise, with entertainment, with external validation, because they are afraid of what will arise in the silence. They fear stillness, not because stillness is painful, but because in stillness they must face themselves. But Buddhism teaches that this is exactly where true peace begins. Not in running, not in searching, not in achieving, but in being. In learning to sit with yourself, without distractions, without escapes, without needing to be anywhere but where you are. Imagine a person lost in a dense forest, frantically searching for a way out, running in every direction, panicking with every step. But what they do not realize is that if they would just stop, if they would just breathe, if they would just be still, they would see the path right in front of them. This is how most people live, so busy trying to escape their own thoughts that they never stop to understand them, so desperate to find peace that they never realize it has been with them all along. But how do you stop searching when your entire life has been built around the idea that happiness exists somewhere outside of you? The first step is awareness. Begin to notice how often you believe that something external will complete you. Pay attention to the thoughts that say, "I will be happy when," and ask yourself, has this ever been true? Has achieving a goal ever brought lasting peace? Or has it only led to the next goal, the next desire, the next thing to chase? The mind is never satisfied because it was never designed to be. It is always searching, always planning, always trying to improve, because it believes that happiness is just one step ahead. But the problem is, no matter how many steps you take, the finish line keeps moving. No matter how much you achieve, the mind will always find something else to want. But what if you stopped playing that game? What if you stopped waiting for something outside of you to bring happiness and simply allowed yourself to feel it now? The reason most people struggle with this is because they have tied their sense of self to their achievements, to their identity, to their place in the world. They have spent their lives building an image, proving their worth, seeking approval. But Buddhism teaches that you do not need to be anything other than what you are. You do not need to prove yourself. You do not need to achieve in order to be worthy. You are already enough, exactly as you are. And the moment you stop trying to become something, you can finally be. But being is difficult when you are used to always doing. Sitting in stillness feels uncomfortable when your mind is conditioned to seek, to strive, to accomplish. But meditation teaches you to break this cycle. It teaches you to observe your thoughts without becoming lost in them. It teaches you to separate who you are from the endless stream of thoughts that arise. And most importantly, it teaches you to experience life without the need to control it. Imagine sitting by a river, watching the water flow. You do not try to stop it. You do not try to hold on to any particular ripple. You simply watch, allowing it to move as it is meant to. This is how you must learn to see life. Thoughts will come and go. Emotions will rise and fall. Circumstances will change. But beneath it all, there is something deeper. Something that is not affected by the surface. Something that remains still even in the chaos. And that is where true peace is found. But peace is not just about stillness. It is also about letting go. So much of our suffering comes from attachment. Attachment to the past, to relationships, to ideas of who we are supposed to be. We hold on to things long after they are meant to leave, fearing that without them, we will be empty. But Buddhism teaches that nothing in life is truly ours to keep. Everything is borrowed. Our experiences, our possessions, even our own bodies. And the more we try to cling to what is meant to change, the more we suffer. Think of a person holding onto a rope that is being pulled away. The harder they grip, the more their hands burn. But the moment they let go, the pain stops. The suffering was never in the rope. It was in the resistance. Life is the same way. The more we resist change, the more we try to force things to stay the same, the more we suffer. But when we learn to let go, we find that peace was never about controlling life. It was about learning to trust it. But letting go is not the same as giving up. It is not about detaching from the world or shutting yourself off. It is about experiencing life fully, without the need to possess, without the need to control. It is about loving without fear, experiencing without attachment, living without always needing a specific outcome. True freedom is not found in escaping. It is found in being fully present, in accepting life as it is, in trusting that whatever comes, you are strong enough to handle it. Ask yourself, what are you holding on to that is keeping you from peace? What thoughts, what beliefs, what fears are preventing you from simply being? And what would happen if, just for a moment, you let them go? Most people believe that if they stop holding on, they will lose something important. But what they do not realize is that by holding on, they are losing something even greater, their own peace. The more you cling, the more you suffer. But the moment you release, the moment you trust, the moment you stop trying to force life into a specific shape, you find that everything you were searching for was already here. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that you do not need to prove anything to anyone, that you do not need to chase happiness, that you do not need to wait for peace. Imagine the freedom of simply being without needing to be anywhere else, without needing to be anyone else. This is not an impossible dream. This is something you can cultivate step by step by shifting your perspective, by questioning your thoughts, by learning to see the present moment for the gift that it is. Take a deep breath. Feel the stillness around you. Know that in this moment, you are whole. You always have been. And the more you stop searching, the more you will realize that what you were looking for was never outside of you. It was always within, waiting to be seen. There comes a time when you must stop waiting for happiness to arrive and realize that it has always been within you. The world has conditioned you to believe that peace is something to be earned, something that will come once you have achieved enough, once you have proved yourself, once you have reached a certain milestone. But what if that was never true? What if happiness was not something in the future, but something hidden beneath the layers of expectations, fears, and attachments you have carried for so long? Most people are so caught up in their own thoughts, their own worries, their own endless striving, that they never pause to question whether any of it is necessary. They live as if life is a race, as if they are constantly running towards something that will finally make them feel whole. But Buddhism teaches that this race is an illusion. There is nowhere to get to. There is no final destination where everything will suddenly fall into place. The only place where peace exists is here, in this moment. And the only reason you cannot feel it is because your mind is always elsewhere. Imagine a person carrying a heavy bag filled with stones. They have carried it for so long that they do not even question it anymore. They have convinced themselves that the weight is necessary, that they need it to survive, that letting go of it would somehow make them incomplete. But what happens when they finally stop and open the bag? They realize that the stones were never essential. They were never a part of them. They were just things they picked up along the way, things they could have set down at any moment. This is how attachment works. You carry unnecessary burdens because you believe they define you. But they do not. And the moment you realize that, you become free. But letting go is not easy. The mind clings to what is familiar, even if it causes suffering. It tells you that you need control, that you need certainty, that you need things to go a certain way in order to be happy. But this is an illusion. Life is unpredictable. No matter how much you plan, no matter how much you try to force things, you cannot control everything. And the more you try, the more you suffer. But what would happen if you let go? If you stopped trying to force life into a perfect shape and simply allowed it to unfold as it is meant to? Think of a river. The water does not resist. It does not try to control its path. It flows effortlessly, adapting to the landscape, moving around obstacles instead of fighting against them. But humans resist. We try to hold on to what is meant to pass. We try to control what is beyond our power. We fear change, even though change is the nature of all things. And in doing so, we create our own suffering. Buddhism teaches that suffering comes from attachment, the belief that we must possess things, that we must control them, that we must hold on tightly in order to be happy. But happiness is not found in attachment. It is found in freedom, in the ability to experience life fully without needing to control it, in the ability to love without fear, to enjoy without clinging, to exist without always needing more. But how do you practice this? How do you let go of attachment when your mind has been trained to hold on? The first step is awareness. Begin to notice how often you tie your happiness to something outside of yourself. Pay attention to the thoughts that say, "I will be happy when," and realize that they are keeping you trapped. They are keeping you from seeing the truth that happiness is not something that comes later. It is something that exists now, but only if you allow yourself to experience it. Meditation is one of the most powerful ways to cultivate this awareness. It teaches you to sit with your thoughts without becoming lost in them. It teaches you to see them for what they are, temporary, fleeting, not something you need to believe or act upon. Through meditation, you begin to realize that your thoughts are like passing clouds. They come and go, but they are not you. You are the sky beneath them, vast, open, untouched by whatever passes through. Imagine sitting in a field, watching the wind move through the grass. You do not try to stop the wind. You do not try to hold on to it. You simply watch, knowing that it will pass, knowing that it is not something you need to control. This is how you must learn to see your thoughts, your emotions, your experiences. They are not meant to be held onto. They are meant to be observed, experienced, and released. But most people do not know how to release. They believe that if they stop worrying, they will lose control. That if they stop holding on to something, they will lose it forever. But what they do not realize is that by holding on, they are losing something even greater, their own peace. The more you cling, the more you suffer. But the moment you let go, the moment you trust, the moment you allow life to move as it is meant to, you find that everything you were searching for was already here. Think about the last time you felt truly at peace. Was it when you were trying to control everything? When you were consumed by worry? When you were obsessing over outcomes? Or was it when you surrendered? When you accepted? When you allowed yourself to simply be? True peace is not found in control. It is found in trust. In trusting that life will unfold as it is meant to, whether you resist it or not. Ask yourself, what would happen if you stopped trying to control everything? What if, instead of fearing the unknown, you embraced it? What if, instead of trying to hold on to things that are meant to pass, you allowed them to leave with gratitude? Most people believe that if they stop trying to control everything,